Well, on the topic of returning to school, there's been a lot of discussion surrounding possible industrial action from primary school head teachers over the last couple of weeks or so. Well, Lawrie Hooper is a political member for the Department of Education, Sport and Culture and joins me live in the studio this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, in his opening comments, Mr. Smith says it's an exciting time for teachers to return back to school, eagerly in anticipation of the pupils arriving. But how many teachers might not be going back, or how many teachers might not be considering this an exciting time?
Everyone will be back in work today. Schools will all be open as normal, so we're not expecting any immediate impact on pupils or on students. Whether any of our teachers are coming back with a little bit of trepidation rather than excitement, I suspect that is probably the case for a few. Obviously, there's always a bit of nervousness, I think, going back for a new school year.
Well, are you able to provide us with an update then on the proposed industrial action we have been hearing about?
Yeah, so the department were advised by the NAHT that the primary school, their primary school members, so their primary school head teachers who are members, have obviously balloted in favour of taking industrial action. The industrial action that they're talking about, which I believe will start today, is more about non-engagement with the department rather than about anything that's going to be having a direct impact today on pupils and students.
Well, in the dispute, it's, quoting, solely based on the interpretation of a clause in the pay policies for teachers. So
Yeah.
Does that mean teachers just don't feel like they're being paid enough?
I suppose that's a simple way of summarising it, actually. There are wider frustrations out there, I believe, about teachers' pay, which the department's trying to engage on to say, yes, OK, we do need to talk about teachers' pay, but that the dispute, this specific dispute, is about actually last year's pay award and the way that that's been applied on Ireland, and the fact that the union in this case is disputing the wording of the contract that was signed that basically sets out how the pay award should have been awarded. And that's basically what the dispute boils down to.
And that's based on similar pay grades in the UK?
Yeah, so the way the pay agreement is structured, there are two events happen in the UK. There's an independent review board that recommends a teacher's pay rise, and then that goes to the Secretary of State for Education, who then approves that or otherwise. And usually what happens is the board makes a recommendation and the Secretary of State just signs it off. But last year, for some reason, the board made a recommendation of a 3.5% across the board pay rise for everybody, and when it got to the Secretary of State, he decided to only apply 3.5% for main scale teachers. Then the upscale teachers got slightly less, and the head teachers got 1.5%. And the way the pay agreement is structured on the Isle of Man is that we implement what they implement in the UK. So we followed the Secretary of State's signed off document. But the union is contending that what we should really have done is followed the independent recommendation.
Well, in the way you're talking, I'm almost inclined to think that you agree with them.
No, this is where it comes down to it's quite a nuanced situation, because in principle, do I think that teachers should be paid more? Yes, I do, actually. That's my personal position. I think we do need to look at the way teachers are paid on the Isle of Man and whether or not we should stay linked to the UK. Is that a good idea? I don't know, but I think it's worth having that discussion with the unions. When it comes to has the department correctly applied the pay policy, that's a different question entirely, and the position on that is quite clear. The department, it says yes, they have correctly applied the pay policy the same way they've applied it every year since the pay policy was signed. And that's where the dispute arises, is down to should we have followed the Secretary of State for Education's signed off document, or should we have followed the recommendation from the independent board? And that's why the department offered binding arbitration to resolve it, because there isn't really a middle ground. You either follow the one or you follow the other. And because both the department and the union are at the other ends of the scale on this, we felt the easiest way of getting it resolved was to say, well, let's put our evidence and your evidence to an independent third party and let them make the decision for us, and then we'll both be bound by that decision and we can move forwards.
So that negotiation, where is that? What stage are we at with that at the moment then?
I was advised last week that NAHT have actually rejected the offer of binding arbitration, so really I think the department needs to now consider its next steps and where we might be able to go from here. Obviously the door remains widely open if the union wants to come back and talk to us. We're more than happy to continue engaging in meaningful discussion with them to see if there is a sensible way of resolving this.
Well, with that clear disparity continuing then, when was the last time you speak to them? Is it a continuous conversation you're having?
In an ideal world, it would be. There was a meeting back in March, I think, where the offer was originally made to go to arbitration, and then we didn't hear from the union for quite some time. And the next conversation I believe we had with them was when we got the formal notification of ballots. So that was in July. So it took a few months for the union to not even to respond, I suppose. And it was only last week, I think, they formally responded to the offer of arbitration. So it is a bit difficult, because I think the union's position is that they don't want to talk until there's something meaningful to talk about.
Well, can you make steps then to get in touch sooner, make sure the conversation is happening?
Oh, absolutely. And again, this week we've reached out again we're doing all this through the Industrial Relations Service, because that's and it's good to have an independent person in the room to kind of help chair the meetings and manage the process. And so again, this week we've reached out to the Industrial Relations Service to again offer, did the union want to meet with us? I believe they might be over this week. And again, the offer is, when they're over, do they want to sit down with the department and have that conversation and keep the discussions going?
Well, we will be hearing from Robert Kelsall from the union later in this week, hopefully on mandate on Friday. I mean, are you willing to sit down with him and have a discussion face to face?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. The department's door is open, and I think the position's been quite clear on that we're more than happy to carry on talking with the union to see if we can find a sensible way that resolves this, that actually everyone can be happy with.